Captain Dylan Hubbard here at Hubbard's Marina with another Sunday night live stream show on our beautiful Sunday night. Getting ready to go live on our Facebook page as well. And we're going to get this thing kicked off for y'all. Happy Sunday night. Captain Dylan Hubbard here at Hubbard's Marina. Hubbard's Marina has been fishing local waters since 1928, over 90 years, almost 100 years, and 4 generations we've been fishing local waters. And tonight we are going to be sharing lots of fishing tips, tricks, and more. It is Sunday, July 14th, 8:30 p.m., and we're coming to you live for our live stream fishing show. If you're not watching this live, you can skip forward to where you see the video start. If you are watching this live, make sure you like the video, comment where you're watching from, share it with friends, and don't forget to call your buddies, get some popcorn and some drinks, and your fishing comments, questions, and concerns lined up, because during our live stream show, we're going to talk all about fishing and what's going on, what we're catching, what's coming up, and then we're also going to be talking all about your questions and answering your questions and talking to you all about it. So hopefully you guys are ready to rock and roll. Gonna be a great show tonight. I appreciate everybody tuning in to join us for this Sunday night live stream fishing show. And we got some free trips to give away. We got some cool stuff to talk about, photos, videos. Missed you guys last week, so we're gonna cover lots of information from the last 2 weeks and answer your questions and talk fishing. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. We do these every Sunday night for about an hour, starting at 8:30 p.m. So hopefully y'all are ready for another great show. As always, we're going to get rolling here in a few minutes. It does take a few seconds to get everybody tuned in and to get all our ducks in a row. So we started a little early. We'll probably get rolling around 8:30 in about 5 or 6 minutes. I appreciate your patience with me as I get this thing locked up, ready to rock and roll. Remember, in the meantime, guys, don't forget to comment where you're watching from and share the video with friends. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and pull out your cell phone and follow us on Instagram too, guys. Come on, help us out. Spread the word. And sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. We're going to be talking all about what's going on, what's coming up, what we've been catching. We're going to show you some photos and videos, and we're going to answer your questions. And in the meantime, we're going to give away some free fishing trips. Hopefully everybody's ready for another great show. I appreciate everybody coming out to join us at Bass Pro Shops this past Saturday, and those who joined us at T.A. Mahoney's this past Thursday. We had 2 great events this week prior to our live show that you guys are watching. Both great events, great time hanging out with the fishing friends and talking fishing in person. And tonight we're doing it in cyberspace. Got some big news for y'all. If you are a fan of our live stream shows, if you've been watching the show for a while, I know a lot of you have been around since we started the show, and when we started the show, it was pretty bad. Did it with my cell phone, then I tried a laptop. It was terrible. It was a nightmare. Did not work too well. And now we are using some cool software, but we have found an even better software, and I think we might have fixed our YouTube problem. I know a lot of people like watching our show on YouTube, but unfortunately, when we give away our free fishing trips, we can only do it on our Hubbard's Marina Facebook page, nowhere else. So you have to be watching the Hubbard's Marina Facebook feed, and you have to comment on that video in order to be eligible to win any free fishing trips. But we are hopeful we may have found a solution to that problem. So we're looking forward to that. tomorrow we're going to be testing it and putting it into place and trying it out, and we're hoping that we have fixed that YouTube problem about being able to give free trips to everybody, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or one of our other Facebook channels. And we even might be streaming to other channels as well. So really excited. Next week's show, we're going to have some new software we're using, and maybe even some cool new tools. Like, for example, we might be able to do some polls, do some spinning of the wheel and stuff like that. So we're gonna play with those toys this week and get it dialed in. So definitely stay tuned for tonight's show, but we're excited that next week we might be able to even do it a little better. So pretty cool. I'm excited. Hopefully you're excited too. Hopefully you always enjoy our show, because I know I enjoy hanging out with you guys and answering your questions to the best of my ability, and giving away free trips. Don't forget about giving away free trips. Hopefully everybody can hear me loud and clear. I did see someone say I was cutting in and out a little bit, so hopefully everybody else can hear me pretty good. Testing 1, 2, 3. Yes, Brenda, we are going to be doing some testing in advance. Tonight we are using the same good old software, so we shouldn't have any problems. Next week we will have the new software, and we are going to be testing it extensively this week. I know, again, if you're a fan of the show, you've been watching for a while, you've seen some of our previous attempts at trying new things, and it didn't really go too well. So we're going to definitely learn from our past mistakes and do a little bit of troubleshooting and testing before we roll it out there. So we're excited. Hopefully you're excited too. And we got some cool stuff going on tonight. So let's hop right into this. It is that time of night. It is 8:30 p.m. almost, and it is time to rock and roll. So let me make sure we're good to go here, and I think so. All right, guys, how you doing? Captain Dylan Hubbard at Hubbard's Marina. Thanks for tuning in to our live stream fishing show tonight, and thanks for hanging out with us, guys. I appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully you're ready to talk fishing. And hopefully you got some questions lined up for me. And don't forget, again, please make sure you like the video, whether you're on YouTube and you thumbs it up, you're on Facebook and you like it, or you share it, or subscribe to our channel. Make sure you do that for me. I'd appreciate it. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about what we've been catching, and I want to start off tonight by showing you some videos from our 39-hour trip. We have been doing well out there on that 39-hour trip. We've been catching a ton of red snapper. The red snapper fishing's been going really well. This is a snippet from a red snapper bite on the 39-hour. You've got 5 rods hooked up right now, bent over, reeling in red snapper. Red snapper flying over the rails, and the fishing has been very good for those red snapper, and we still have more time to catch those red snapper. So if you want to get out there and take part of this 39-hour fishing fun, red snapper season goes all the way through August 1st, end of day August 1st, so 12:01 a.m. August 2nd is when a red snapper season officially ends. So we got lots of time. We still have some really nice 39 hours. We have 2 open spots on a 12-hour extreme that opened up as well. And we've got 39-hour trips on Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday with some room on them as well. The Tuesday, June 30th trip, that's the last red snapper trip of season, has a ton of room on it. So lots of great options for you if you want to get out there and do some red snapper fishing. You can see here, let me show you, big boxes of fish.
So we got us a box full, guys. Big groupers. Here they are, guys. They traveled from Charleston to South Carolina. You guys are going to be famous now. He's getting the ice ready. That was it.
See, it's funny. People always, if you guys are fans on our Facebook and YouTube channel, if you watch our videos quite a bit, you see when we have those 39-hour and 44-hour trips come in, people always comment, "Where's the ice? Why don't you have those fish on ice? I can't believe you leave those fish without ice." You guys saw there how it works. Basically, that fish box fills up slowly, and as it's filling up, we scoop ice over from that small fish box on top of those fish. So those fish are covered in ice the whole time. But then once that fish box fills up and starts overflowing, we pull those fish out on deck, and then we layer them in that small fish box. Put a layer of fish, layer of ice, layer of fish, layer of ice, layer of fish, layer of ice, until that fish box is full. And then we start using the big fish box again, and if we fill it up, then we start packing fish in the front fish box. Sometimes all 3 fish boxes come back full, especially during amberjack season when we get those big fat amberjacks filling up the fish boxes. So we're looking forward to that. Amberjack season is just right around the corner. August 1st, those amberjack open up. Looking forward to that for sure. So this week I got out on a 39-hour trip myself. It was a lot of fun. We're going to talk about that some tonight, and did very well on the mangrove snapper. Before the sun rose, I almost limited out on mangroves. We were targeting some bigger red snapper and yellowtails and stuff, so I didn't quite get my mangrove snapper limit before sunrise. Plus, it was a really long run. We were on a private trip, so went to a little different area, so I didn't get much fishing time, but I did get some monster mangrove snapper. It was a ton of fun on that Daiwa Saltiga LD50 2-speed reel. Got some really nice red snapper. And during that same trip, we caught some big African pompanos. Always a lot of fun to see those big African pompanos. They are so good eating and super unique looking. So that was pretty cool to see these big African pompano come up. And then I got my new reel from Dogfish Tackle. The guys over there at Dogfish hooked me up with a great setup, and they did a really good job spooling my reels. When customers and guests and clients and fishing friends come to Hubbard's Marina to buy reels and our custom bull bay rods that I use right there, we always send them over to Dogfish Tackle to line up the reels, because that's where I go to line up my reels. They do a really, really great job. They really know their stuff, and they take great care of you. So shout out to Dogfish Tackle over there on Park Boulevard for helping me out with that Daiwa Saltiga. This is a Saltiga 4000 spinning reel. It's got 35 pounds of drag. It has more drag than you know what to do with, trust me. It was crazy. And I was knocker rig fishing. The bite had kind of slowed down a little bit. That you can see behind me, that big storm was approaching. So the bite had kind of slowed down a little bit. We were kind of swinging off our anchor heading a little bit. So because the bite slowed down, and because it was a super light private charter, I was able to grab my spinning rod and do some knocker rig fishing. And sure enough, as soon as that knocker rig started to get down into the water column, bam, this thing just freight trained it, swallowed that thing, and took a huge run. This fish, I hooked it in the port bow, and it took me all the way around the port pulpit, underneath the anchor line, all the way around the starboard pulpit, and halfway down the starboard side before I was able to get it to the boat. So it was a really, really fun fight. It was a big, big red snapper, and that is a good example of why you don't use light tackle for these big fish, just because they run you all around the boat. And if it was a normal trip where there was 25, 30, 40 people fishing, that would have been a huge problem. But on this private charter, we only had 17 people on the boat fishing, so it made it real easy for me to land that big fish, even though it was running me all around the boat. And even with 35 pounds of drag and that custom Bull Bay Hubbard's Marina rod, it still was giving me quite the fight. It was a lot of fun. Here is a nice scamp grouper, or what was a nice scamp grouper. Now it's just a little bit of mincemeat after a big shark got a hold of it. Here is one happy lady angler and a big gag. We've been seeing a lot of ladies out there on our 39-hour trip this red snapper season and our 12-hour extreme trip. It's really cool that we see so many lady anglers out there going deep and not shying away from these extreme trips. Even been seeing some single lady groups and some groups of friends coming out. So I really, really like to see this new transformation. I mean, these lady anglers kick butt, and we have quite the cool group out there fishing. So really enjoying seeing them get out there and go fishing and flourish. It's like a lady angler fishing club, so it's pretty cool. And hopefully it grows and continues to be successful. We've been seeing some big gag grouper. Lots of big gags lately, especially right before this blow. Now with this big blow blowing through here, the big blow being that big tropical storm / hurricane going through the Gulf, I think that's going to have a really good effect on fishing. Typically, as those low pressures approach, the fish get really, really excited, and they typically bite really, really well for us as those low pressures approach. Then once those low pressures move through the area and make the weather get all rough and crazy and the wind blowing and the rain and the barometer moves quite a bit, the fishing kind of stops. Not a lot of fish cooperate during that nasty weather. Then once the low pressure moves past, whether it's a cold front or a tropical system, once it moves past and the wind calms down, the waves calm down, the water starts clearing back up and the barometer stabilizes, typically the bite goes crazy. So we had a 39-hour trip leave today, and I'm hoping that they come back in with a huge pile of fish, and I'm hoping a lot of big gag grouper behind that storm. But this is definitely a big one, to say the least. But we got another big one coming up from the 12-hour extreme. We had some gags in the 35, almost 40-pound range. So really cool to see those big gag grouper. Eric Deskin's got himself a pair of big gag grouper. There's another shot of that monster. Beautiful fish, big old rusty belly. Been seeing some nice mangrove snapper on our 39-hour and this one from our 12-hour extreme trip. Again, like I mentioned before, we did have a few spots open up on that 12-hour extreme trip. So if anybody's out there willing to do one of those crazy, cool, unique trips, buy those spots, book them now, go online, grab them, because they are not going to be around long. We do have tons of room left on our 39-hour trip, especially that June 30th Tuesday trip. We've got about probably 25 spots left on that, but the Sunday and Tuesday trips coming up, or actually we don't have any Sunday trips left this season. The last two Sundays are private charters, but we do have Tuesday and Friday trips left this red snapper season. So definitely still time to get out there, guys. Here is that big gag. That one's a nice, really nice gag, don't get me wrong, but this one was the monster, the big one that we've seen lately. It weighed in at around 35 pounds. I think we have a picture of it on the scale. This one coming from the 12-hour extreme. Really, really cool to see such a big, huge gag. And this guy caught another big gag too. He was having a really good day out there on that 12-hour extreme. There's a monster red snapper, and you can see that's the same gentleman who helped, or I guess whose buddy caught this big gag. So these guys were some pretty good fishermen. They had some really, really good catches on that 12-hour extreme. Got Kyle Hopwood and a big old rusty belly. There's Rich showing off that big rusty. Some nice red grouper around too. The red grouper bite's kind of slow, but we're still seeing some nice ones nonetheless. Some big red snapper around. There's another monster red snapper. Pair of nice gags. They just kept coming. I mean, really, really good bite of fish up until that big blow. And hopefully behind that big blow, there's that 34.2 pound gag. And hopefully behind that storm and all the bad weather we've had, we're going to see these fish pick up again and get another good push of fish. I mean, just beautiful. Great photos this week. That's what happens. We missed a week of our live show, so we have 2 weeks of good photos to show you. Definitely happy with all these great catches. Some big mangroves. I like these photos. All right, so let's look at some of the video here and talk to Will. We'll hear from Will here real quick about that 39-hour trip. So check this out. What's going on, Will?
Not much. Getting ready to head out on this 39-hour here Sunday to Tuesday trip.
Yes, sir. Got another one, man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you got some light loads coming up. The last trip of red snapper season's only got 25 people on it right now. How about that?
Yeah, I was wondering about that. We've been pretty solid right now, guys. So if you want to get out there with less people, the end of the season is a lot of times the best time to get out there, especially with a long season like this.
Yeah, and then we have some Tuesday trips with some lighter loads, only 30, 35 people, so still plenty of time to catch those red snapper, right?
Yep, yeah, we got almost a boat full this trip, but the fishing's still good out there. We're going to get our boat limit of red snapper almost guaranteed. But, guys, we haven't beat those red snappers down at all, so come on out. We got plenty of bottom to fish out there, and go ahead.
And that's kind of what a lot of people, I know in the past, everybody's worried about fishing at the end of red snapper season, thinking that, oh, the fishing's going to be slower. But this year we haven't really seen that slow down, right?
No, we've had a few picky trips to it. They're mainly due to conditions. You know, when the fish don't like certain conditions, they're not biting as well. But there's no lack of red snapper and gags out there right now.
Yeah, the gag bite has been surprisingly pretty good despite the super hot conditions of the water. You guys have been doing pretty well on it.
Yeah, and we had a little blow out there this weekend, and I wouldn't be surprised if we do well on the gags this coming week here. It may have blown some of them around.
Yeah, definitely. I think today's trip is busier for that reason. As a lot of people think, and myself included, that this trip is going to be one for the record books right behind this blow. And then we're going out again Tuesday to do it again. So, what would your tip or trick be for this end of red snapper season?
The end of red snapper season, sometimes they get pickier, but like I said, we've been on them pretty good. The one thing I'm noticing now that will catch you mangoes and red snapper is the small squid or the small octopus. That's a different bait that I haven't mentioned that has been working out there.
So the whole squid, you mean?
Yeah, the whole squid or the whole baby octopus I've been seeing. I saw a gag on an octopus recently, and the squids have been getting mangoes and red snapper out there.
Nice. I know Anthony on the Flying Hub 2, guys that go out on that trip really like those baby octopus and whole baby squids that we sell in the office, in the freezer. And they do really well on pretty much everything you just mentioned, mangroves, red snapper, and gags.
Yep.
Cool. Now, after red snapper season, at that first trip in July, so June 30th is our last red snapper trip. That's what I said. July 30th is our last red snapper trip, and then August 2nd is our first Amberjack trip. Amberjack are open back up. So, what about Amberjack? What would you suggest to people for jacks?
Jigs, of course, but there's some big ones out there too, guys, and they like big fish, you know, so those big ones eat a big bait. So I like fishing jigs, but also you can catch porgies and fish with porgies out there. There's not many baits that you're allowed to fish with for those jacks legally, but porgies is one of them. And we caught one recently that bit a fish on the way in that was 80 to 100 pounds. It was so big we didn't lift it in the boat. We didn't want to kill it by lifting it up and bringing it in the boat. It was a giant one.
Yeah. We got about a 90-pounder when we were filming for Salt Strong, and we got him on a fillet of bonita dead bait, which was odd. But definitely there's some big boys out there ready to go. What would you suggest tackle-wise for Amberjack?
Tackle-wise, I would do 60-pound main line with 60-pound at least leader. They don't really mind a heavy leader line. You could fish 80 with no problem on those, and even heavier if you wanted to, just to be sure you got him. And he's not going to generally take you into any structure. You can loosen your drag a little bit as compared to grouper and red snapper and let him run around a little bit more. But on the big boat, at least, you don't want to let him run around too much, or he'll get tangled up with you.
Let's stop for a second. Look at that thing. got a Honda motor on the back of his kayak. That was pretty awesome. I don't care. That was pretty cool. I had to stop the video to show you guys that. When he was going by, I was like, what is that? And sure enough, it was a kayak with a motor on it. And it had a plastic prop. It was really, really unique. And that guy fishes John's Pass quite a bit with that little motor setup. So pretty cool little kayak for sure. Let's get back to the video. How to stop. That's pretty cool.
There they go, 3 of them.
So yeah, definitely those Amberjack don't seem to want to break you off in the rocks or rock you up. The only thing you got to worry about is when you're fishing a wreck and it's got a lot of superstructure, they might break you off in the wreck, right?
Yeah, I have had big ones take you over an edge or around a wreck, and you can feel it rubbing on there, and eventually they'll break your line a lot of times. But sometimes there's nothing you can do because he's so big. But sometimes you just got to tighten your drag down a little bit and get him away from that, or get some line where you know you're getting him closer to the boat. Then you can back off your drag a little bit if you wanted to.
Yeah, because most of the time with those jacks, unlike the gags, like a gag, you're fishing 90-95% drag. With those Amberjack, you're fishing only like 65-70% drag, right?
Yeah, you don't go all the way, but you still want it tight enough to where the fish isn't free swimming down there and tangling other people up too. You know, you want it tight enough to maintain good pressure on him, but not too tight where he snaps your line when he's trying to run.
Yeah, and you gotta also keep in mind of other people on the boat. That's why I always suggest to people to stay away from those spinning reels, right?
Yeah, you could catch him on a jig on a spinning reel, but you're gonna tangle people up on the big boat a lot of times, unless you're up there in the pulpit. That's the one spot I say you could get away with it, with jigging with a spinning rod.
And those Amberjack trips are pretty light, especially the first couple in August. We only got 25-30 people, so you could definitely go up there to the bow and get away with jigging on some light tackle. But typically Amberjack, the conventional setup, like a 9-aught is what you would go to, right?
Yeah, heavy reel, at least 60-pound test, and if you're using a big bait, a heavy weight on there just to maintain that bait where he doesn't swim around on you. I would say an 8-ounce weight with a 5 to 8 foot leader.
Yeah, you go longer leader with those big live baits, right?
Yeah, I like a little bit longer leader.
Yeah.
But if certain reasons you can make it shorter too if you needed to. But
yeah.
A lot of times
essentially, if it's a busier trip, there's more people around, you shorten it up. But if there's not a lot of people around, 8, 10, 12 foot even, right?
Yeah, you could fish a long leader on those jacks too, and sometimes they bite it better that way.
Because you're trying to get that big live bait a lot of room to move around from your lead, right?
Yeah, and look natural down there as opposed to being stuck right to the lead.
Gotcha. All right, cool, man. Well, any other action out there? You've been seeing any pelagics? The pelagic bite seems to be pretty weak right now.
Yeah, not too much going on. Your best shot is when we get out there in the daytime in the deep water for the red snappers, and there's wahoo and tuna out there. We just haven't been fishing them too hard, but it's getting to be that time of year for wahoos right now for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if we started getting a couple of them.
What's your favorite wahoo lure?
Favorite, I would say, is the Yozuri Bonita, one of those bigger ones, and you don't catch much trash fish on that. You don't get bonitas on that. You get a blackfin tuna on it occasionally.
On that last 39 hour that I was fishing on, we had that Yozuri Bonita way back there, and it started screaming. I was like, oh yeah, we got her, boys. Get it up to the surface. It was a huge barracuda.
Oh,
like
you will get that.
Yeah. So occasionally you do catch some trash.
That is the trash fish that will bite that one. Yeah.
It was a monster barracuda, man. I thought it was wahoo for sure.
We did that recently. Last week we had a double barracuda.
Oh, the double cuda.
That's how our trolling's been. Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Any other things you can think of as a parting tip or trick?
Like I said, those squids, but you know what I do sometimes when the red snapper bite's a little bit trickier? I'll reel that whole squid off the bottom a little bit. A couple cranks up off the bottom.
Yeah.
And they'll come up and bite it.
Yeah, I like a lot of times that reminds me with these red snapper, especially when you're having a little bit of a tricky bite or on the bottom, you're mostly catching the smaller ones. I was catching a lot of big ones on that recent 39 hour, just getting a big dead bait and then dropping it to where I can't see it anymore, and then slow dropping it from there, like real slow dropping it. When you feel that first little nibble, just stop it, lock it off, and that's where I was catching them.
Yeah, it's pretty fun doing it that way too. I've been having success process with that, where the bite stopped, I went over there, dropped down, and reeled it up a little bit, and they'll bite it up off the bottom.
Yeah, those big fish come off that bottom a lot of times, especially when you've been fishing a spot a while, right?
Yeah, they're suspended around down there, but they're not biting all the bait sitting on the bottom anymore.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate your time, Wilbo. Have a good trip.
All right, man.
So, like we were talking there at the end of the video, sometimes those big red snapper are at the top or bottom of that water column. So when you're dropping down a big live bait or a big dead bait and you're trying to target that really big red snapper, it helps sometimes when you're dropping down, you watch the bait. When the bait disappears in the water, then you put the brake on by applying pressure to the spool with your thumb, and then you drop that bait really slow the rest of the way down. And when you feel that first little nibble, just set it, get ready for the bite. And a lot of times you'll hook those bigger red snapper on the way to the bottom, and that gives you a really good chance to get them up quickly, prevent getting tangled, and then also you're going to have a chance at a really nice fish. On that recent trip that I was fishing on, I caught a lot of big red snapper, and the way I did it was doing that when I had a really big nice piece of bait. I was dropping it slow. If I didn't get a hit, I got down to the bottom. I waited 30 to 60 seconds. If I didn't get a bite, I'd raise my rod tip to the sky real slow, and then I drop it back down to the bottom really slowly. And what I was doing is that straightens out my leader, so that way it has a really nice natural presentation on the bottom, and that leader's nice and stretched out. When you're dropping that fish finder rig, you have an egg sinker in your bait, and you have that swivel and about a 4 to 5 foot leader. Sometimes when you drop it down, your sinker will end up right on top or right next to your bait. And when you raise your rod tip to the sky real slow and drop it down to the bottom real slow, the current and the drift and the swing of the boat is going to stretch that leader out. So now your bait is as far away as possible from your lead. That gives you a more natural presentation. And then I keep my thumb and forefinger on the line right in front of the reel, so that way I can feel the bite, feel anything really well. And then also I'm constantly moving with the boat, constantly raising my rod tip if the boat's going down, lowering my rod tip if the boat's going up, and constantly keeping enough pressure to feel the lead, but not enough pressure to disturb that lead. Because even the hardest, most rock solid bottom possible, great fishing spots have a little bit of silt or sand on top of the rock. And if you are moving or disturbing that lead at all, it creates a little puff of sand. And that puff of sand is enough to scare away that quality fish that was looking at your bait. That smaller, more aggressive, not as intelligent fish doesn't care. He'll still bite your bait. So if you want to catch that really big, nice, quality fish, you have to really actively fish. Keep your fingers on the line in front of the reel, constantly move your rod tip with the boat, and constantly stay vigilant with your hand on the crank, ready to start reeling and setting the hook, because you've got to start cranking when you feel that bite so you can set that hook quickly and effectively and get that line into the reel and that fish up off the bottom. So definitely real important to make sure you're actively fishing. That helps you get those bigger quality fish more easily. So let's look at a few more videos here from those 39-hour trips. Another big gag
Eric got him a
grouper.
pair of these things. That's the second one right there. There's the other one. Look at that.
Another big gag.
All right, now let's go to let's go to camera now.
Awesome fish for sure. They've been doing really well on that 39-hour trip, as I said, and there's still more of them left if you're ready to get out there and do some offshore fishing on those 39-hour trips. Besides offshore, if you're more of a shore-based fisherman, the snook fishing inside Johns Pass continues to be crazy good. Been seeing a lot of big snook at night. This morning, I was catching a lot of snook. This morning, I showed up to work a little early, and I got that new Daiwa Saltiga 4000 from Dogfish Tackle. I was just so excited to use it. I used it on that 39-hour trip, but I just couldn't get enough. So this morning, I went out there, and I was free lining shrimp as the tide just started to go out, and it was on fire. Essentially, my shrimp would only stay in the water about 2 to 3 minutes before I had another fish bite my hook. I landed a couple of them, but they were all pretty schooly sized fish. I didn't get any real monsters that were noteworthy enough for a photo, but it was a lot of fun regardless. Plus, I did this early before anyone was there to help me take a photo, but it was a lot of fun this morning. The snook bite has really good, especially in the wee hours of the morning around Johns Pass. A lot of these big girls are coming up on those flare hawk style jigs, but live shrimp and live pass crabs have been working really well as well, if you'd rather do that. Then you've got these mangrove snapper. Mangrove snapper have been biting well around Johns Pass, around the mouth of the Tampa Bay. Pretty much any pass or jetty with rocky structure, the Skyway fishing piers, the Fort DeSoto fishing piers, the mangrove snapper bite is going really well. That warm water has those mangrove snapper really, really active and aggressive. Tarpon fishing's going really well. This is Captain Chris Wiggins in the blue. He does a lot of local fishing trips. You can contact us and I can get you in touch with him for a private charter. He does a lot of tarpon fishing. He's been catching a lot of big tarpon. You can see our Egmont Key ferry boat behind him here. This fish was jumping crazy, putting on a show, and our ferry boat happened to be passing by. So the people that were spending the day at the island with us aboard our Tampa Bay ferry to Egmont Key from Fort DeSoto not only got to go swimming, shelling, and snorkeling out at Egmont Key with us, but then they got a tarpon show thanks to Captain Chris Wiggins and his happy fishing client there. So it was pretty cool. Cool story, to say the least. And then here's some more big snook from Johns Pass. Here's a juvenile tarpon they caught inside Johns Pass this past week. The redfish bite's going pretty well. That warm water has those redfish pretty lethargic. The gold spoon working real slow above those grass flats and mangrove shorelines, and oyster bars work well, and also cut deadbait. The cut deadbait works really well for those redfish this time of year because they're super lethargic due to that warm weather. So the cut deadbait on the bottom has been helping out to get them chewing. But the snook inside Johns Pass are definitely the notable exciting things as of late. We are going to go ahead and get into your questions here. I've been seeing some good questions, and I want to get into those a little earlier so we have lots of time for your questions this go around. But we are going to give away a free fishing trip right now. A lot of times we wait to the end of the show, and I want to make sure I do it in the middle of the show this time, switch it up a little bit on you guys, and make sure people who are watching the show to watch the show get the best chance of winning, not those people who pop in at the end of the show. I don't want them stealing any of your free chances at free fishing trips. So we're going to give away a 5-hour half day for two right now. So let's go ahead and give away a 5-hour half day for two. Let's see who's going to win. 5-hour half day for two. Coming right up now. Who won? Scott Wilhelm from Colorado. You just won a 5-hour half day for two. Remember, guys, if you are picked as a free winner for those free fishing trips, you do have to go ahead and message the Hubbard's Marina Facebook page as quick as you can. So right on the right on the video that you're watching, you can just click Hubbard's Marina and shoot me a message with your name, phone number, and full home address. Or you can email me at info@hubbardsmarina.com, your full name, phone number, and email and home address, and I'll send you out those free trips. So remember, you do have to do that pretty quickly. If you take too much time, then I know you weren't watching the show, and then you don't get those free trips. Because, again, we're giving away free trips, but it's for you guys watching the show, and I want to make sure I keep it as fair as possible for you guys watching the show. Now, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you guys missed it, if you weren't in at the very beginning of the show, this week we are working on some new software. So next week we should have some new software that's going to make our giveaways even more exciting, and it's going to put all our comments together, so it's going to make it easier for me, and we're going to be able to stream to more channels. So we're real excited about that. We'll be able to do some polls and some other cool tricks with that new software. So next week's show promises to be even better. But let's get into some questions here. Don't forget, we're going to give away a free 10-hour all day for two. And depending on the viewers, we're either going to give away a half-price 39-hour fishing trip or a fully free 39-hour fishing trip. Who knows? We are at, right now, 230 live viewers between Facebook and Instagram, or Facebook and YouTube. And if we get up to 300, it's a free 39-hour trip. If we don't get up to 300, then it's a half-price 39-hour trip. Still a lot of good free fishing trips. So that's awesome, hopefully. So let's get into some questions here that you guys have for me. One of the questions I saw was about rod rentals. Do we rent rods and reels? Yes, on all of our fishing trips, we rent rods and reels. So you can get a rod and reel rental on any of our party boat trips. If you book one of our private fishing charters, we have 4 different private charter boats. We have actually a lot of different boats, but if you go onto our website and click private charters right there on the top, it'll take you to our private charter page of our website, and it will show all the different private charter boats that we have. We've got the Hub, Mrs. Hub, Flying Hub 1, and Flying Hub 2, and when you privately charter a boat, you get your rod, reel, and all your tackle included. There's a 9% gratuity to the captain and 9% gratuity to the crew thrown in there. All your baits included. So a private charter is more all-inclusive, whereas the party boat's kind of more a la carte. You can bring everything yourself and just pay for the trip, or you can bring nothing and get a rod rental, get a meal package, and pay for the trip. So it's kind of more a la carte for you, so that way you can take some things on the menu or take nothing on the menu and bring it all yourself. So it's kind of customizable in that manner. But we do offer rod and reel rentals on all of our party boat trips. When you rent a rod and reel, that comes with your rod, reel, and all your tackle for the entire trip. You can also, if you have a rod and reel but you don't have all the tackle, you can bring your rod and reel and pay for a rod and reel rental and use your rod and reel, and we will supply you tackle. So that is an option that a lot of people take advantage of as well. But if you don't rent a rod and reel, you need your own rod, reel, and all your tackle for a trip. To answer your question about rod rentals, let's see what other questions we had here. Another question was about those private charters. They asked about a 39-hour private charter. This red snapper season, we do have a total of 4 private 39 hours booked. We have a ton of private 12-hour extremes and private 10 hours and 8 hours for red snappers, some 15 hours. So private charters are available. You can privately charter one of those 4 smaller custom-built vessels I just showed you, or you can always get together a big group like corporate event. A lot of businesses will charter out our big party boats, or just families. Some bigger families will privately charter out our big party boats, and we do offer private 39-hour and private 44-hour and even private 63-hour trips, but you do have to book them early because those trips do fill out for sure. And a lot of people keep asking about moonshine. This is definitely not moonshine, just simply water. But I appreciate you thinking so highly of me. I'm definitely not that much of a man to be able to gulp out of a moonshine jar. I do like moonshine, but this isn't it. But thank you. If I took a big swig of moonshine like that, I'd be coughing up a lung for sure, looking a little sideways. But I appreciate it. I prefer my Jameson whiskey the most, for sure. Drank a little too much of that the other night though, so backing off the Jameson. It's red snapper season. I'm a little too busy to be enjoying the Jameson and the moonshine right now. But where were we? Oh, the next question was about spinning tackle. So I showed you that red snapper photo earlier with that big red snapper. So spinning tackle, we do use it occasionally offshore. As you can see in this photo, I caught this red snapper with spinning rod and reel. But a spinning rod and reel is not the best option, in my opinion, for offshore deep water fishing. I would never fish with a spinning rod and reel, specifically on the bottom for grouper, snapper, really anything offshore in deeper water. What I use a spinning rod and reel for on these longer range deep water trips is I use it for two things mainly. I use it for knocker rig fishing, or I use it for vertical jigging, and occasionally I'll use it most often for pitch rod fishing when I see a mahi swim up, or I see some tuna around, or I see a triple tail on some floating debris. That's what I use the spinning rod for on those offshore trips. That spinning rod isn't really meant to drop down to bottom. And the reason why is if you hook a big fish, you don't have the leverage or the ability. Oh, I hit a button. What button did I hit? You don't have the leverage or the ability to fight that big fish in. So with catching a bigger fish, you want to be able to use the rail to your advantage and use the rail to land that big fish and use the leverage. And also when you catch a big fish, it's kind of hard for me to show you, but essentially you have that rod in your hand like this, and your elbow is into your chest, into your gut, and that creates a little V, and that V gives you a lot of leverage and power, so you're using your body to fight that fish. So you can rock your whole body back. You're not using your arms to hold that fish up. With the spinning rod, you've got one hand on the rod, and you're using that arm to fight that fish. It's just not as much leverage. It's not as powerful as a grip to catch big fish offshore. Let me see if I can find this video here real quick. Let me see if I can find it. Salt Strong posted a pretty cool video. Yeah, here we go. So this is going to show you what I mean by using the rail. This is from our Salt Strong trip. Captain Anthony was using my Bull Bay rod to catch a big amberjack, and you can see what I mean here. So we were fishing out there in super deep water. He had dropped down to catch a big grouper, so he thought this was a big grouper at first, and you can see how he's got his arm into his side there, so he's using his whole body to fight that fish. He's not just using his one arm. Like with the spinning rod right now, you'd be screwed. You couldn't fight that fish. Whereas with these big rods, look what he just did. He just dropped the foam of the rod onto the rail. So he's now using the boat to fight the fish, and he's using the rail as a lever system to fight that fish. So he's down on one knee trying to lift that rod up because he can't do it anymore. That fish is digging too hard. So with the spinning rod and reel, you just don't have the ability to do this type of thing and fight the fish that hard. So a spinning rod and reel just is inferior, period, when you're fighting big fish. They do make big, huge spinning rods that are very powerful, that have plenty of drag. For example, that new Daiwa Saltiga 4000 that I bought has 35 pounds of drag. That has the same drag rating as my Daiwa Saltist conventional reel. That's a size 50. So it has tons of drag capacity, but there is no physical way that I could land the same fish with that spinning reel as I could with a conventional reel of even smaller size, because I have the ability with that conventional reel to use these methods, using my body to fight the fish, using the rail if I need to. You just have a lot more flexibility with a big conventional rod and reel. So to answer your question, I like spinning rod and reels offshore. I bring spinning rod and reels offshore when I go fishing, but I use them for pitch rods. I use them for flat line fishing. I use them for knocker rig fishing, and that's about it. I don't put a heavy weight on it and drop it to the bottom to fish. But If you're fishing near shore, that kind of changes. If I'm fishing near shore on a half-day trip or a 10-hour trip or a 12-hour night mangrove snapper trip inside of 100 foot of water, I will use some of those bigger spinning rods to go mangrove snapper fishing with. But out there past 100 foot of water, past 120 foot of water, fishing for those bigger fish, no shot I'm dropping down a spinning rod and reel to the bottom, at least for me. That's my opinion, and that's what I recommend, especially when you're using those bigger baits and trying to catch those bigger fish out in deeper water. Now, a lot of people are asking what was on the end of that line, so I'll show you here real quick to get you excited about Amberjack season. This is the end of that video. This is what Captain Anthony was struggling with, that big conventional rod, about an 89-pound Amberjack here. Some people have seen that video. We showed it in a past live show, so that's why I didn't want to show it again, at least show the whole thing again. But big old Amberjack, I'll show you as we hold it up. So we're excited for Amberjack season. These Amberjack open August 1st. They're open through the end of the year, through the end of October. So we have Amberjack season August, September, and October. If you want to get out there and get a chance to wrestle one of those big jacks, which are always lots of fun. A lot of work, but a lot of fun for sure. Now, another question I saw, which was a good question, was on your top shot, does it matter what color line you use? Typically, I would say no. Pink line, clear line, white line, it doesn't really matter. Now, what I would say is you don't want to use like the high vis yellow or the neon green. So yes and no. The color I don't think matters very much, but you just want to make sure that you're not using one of those high vis neon color trolling lines as your top shot. The idea with the top shot is you're giving yourself a shock absorber, but you also don't want braid near your lead because you don't want the fish to see it. So that kind of defeats the purpose if you're using one of those high visibility lines like those neon colors or yellow. But good question on the top shot. I like clear mono or pink mono, but gray, blue, there's a bunch of different colors that would work well. But let's give away a 10-hour all-day trip and answer some more questions here. So who won a 10-hour all-day trip for two? Again, this is a 10-hour all-day trip for two, so that is a $180 value coming at you guys. Let's see who won a 10-hour all-day for two. Drum roll, please. Tracy Jones from Southern Illinois. She would love to win, and she just did. So congratulations, Tracy Jones. Remember, if you win, you do have to shoot me a message to our Hubbard's Marina Facebook page with your name and a home address and phone number. And then also you could email me at info@hubbardsmarina.com as well if you don't get a chance to message our page. But do it quick. If you wait more than 10-15 minutes, I know you weren't watching the show live, so make sure you do it quick, guys. Now, we still have a half-price 39-hour trip to give away, possibly even a free 39-hour trip to give away. So don't lose track yet, guys. Keep staying tuned. And let's answer some more of these questions. Another person asked, when is the best time for gag grouper? My favorite time for gag grouper fishing is from about Thanksgiving to about the end of the year. So around mid to late November to the end of the year is a great time for gag grouper. They bite really, really well as that water cools down. Those cold fronts start getting really strong. It stirs things up. It gets those gags moving, and they get very excited and hungry. So great time for gag grouper from Thanksgiving to the New Year's Eve day. So that's my favorite time for gags, but they do bite well in October as well, even the beginning of November. The cooler months are definitely better for those big gags. Red grouper, the best time for those typically is around the spring and summertime. But right now, just the red grouper bite hasn't been all that great. We haven't been catching a lot of red grouper the past year and a half or so. We're still catching some nice ones, and we still catch them pretty good here and there. But the red grouper bite has definitely declined overall. So there is a big worry at the Gulf Council and federal fishing management about red grouper. So likely we're going to see some pretty big changes in red grouper regulations here over the course of the next year, year and a half or so. So stay tuned for that. We'll definitely keep you informed on those fishing regulations as always when we're at those National Marine Fisheries meetings. But I would imagine because of that downturn in red grouper action, they're going to do some drastic management changes to hopefully try to improve the red grouper stock. We see a lot of juvenile red grouper out there in deeper water, but we just don't see a lot of those keeper-sized and bigger fish. The red grouper population is definitely taking quite a hit. So, to answer your question, though, best time for red grouper around spring and summer for sure. So let's see here. Another question was, what is the reason for the swim noodles around the rails? During our red snapper season, we do a ton of 39-hour trips every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. And those 39-hour guests and 44-hour guests, they love to bring noodles. So they bring the pool noodles, especially the pool noodles with the bigger hole through the center of them, and they wrap them around the railing of the boat and then duct tape them or zip tie them on there. And the reason for it is because you saw what Anthony did when he hooked that big amberjack. He was using the rail to rest his rod on. The pool noodle conserves and helps make sure that you don't beat your rod up. But in my opinion, I would never use that because, like Anthony, as long as you make sure the foam of the rod is on the rail, you're not going to beat your rod up. And your glass of your rod should never be on the rail because you don't want to put the rod that far forward. If you're going to put the rod on the rail, you want that rail as close to your reel as possible to prevent breaking your rod. If you have the railing on your rod closer to the tip of your rod, the chances for breaking that rod when you're resting it on the rail is exponentially increased. So if you're putting your rod on the railing, make sure you're putting that foam of the rod on the railing and make sure it's as far back on that foam as close to the rail as possible. Definitely really important to make sure you do that so you don't break your rod and reel, and that will prevent that. And then it also negates the reason for a noodle, because if you're using the foam of your rod, you're not beating up your rod, so you don't have to use the noodle. But a lot of people like it, and they see other people doing it, so they just kind of follow suit, and it becomes one of those things where everybody uses it. He's doing it, so I'm going to do it, and it just becomes a popular thing. Kind of like everybody likes fishing the back of the boat. Everybody likes to book the back of the boat, but in my opinion, the back of the boat's the worst spot to fish. It's kind of the same thing. The pool noodle's one of those things for sure. No offense if anybody likes pool noodles. They are more comfortable, and it is nice. I was wrong. Let me take that back. Let me reverse. The pool noodle, what is cool that I've seen some guys do is they use the pool noodles to hang their extra leaders on. And that is helpful. I have done that before. Someone else put a real long pool noodle on the rail, and it kind of overflowed into the area I was fishing. And I tied a bunch of extra leaders, and instead of hanging them somewhere behind me, and they're all clumped up hanging on a light or hanging on a wire, I was able to dig them into the pool noodle on the outside of the railing, and they all stayed nice and straight for me, and they were right there by my rod when I wanted to re-rig. So that is a good option. That is a good use of that pool noodle. So another question I saw was about bait for amberjack. What is the best bait for amberjacks? I really like big, huge monster live bait. Vertical jigs work really well for amberjack, especially those bigger knife jigs and big flutter jigs and the diamond jigs. Bigger is better when you're fishing for jacks with those jigs. But big, huge live baits work really well. The biggest pinfish, the biggest pigfish, or you can also use some of the porgy species for big live bait. So if you catch a big like knobbed eye porgy or a big huge grass porgy or something like that, you can use one of those 1, 2, 3 pound fish for a big amberjack bait with a 100-pound test, big 10, 12-aught hook, big 8-ounce lead, and about 6 to 8 foot leader, and you can drop that sucker down and hold on tight. Same thing with jacks when you're fishing that big live bait. Same thing with red snapper. The same method of dropping that bait till you can't see it anymore, and then stop, and then drop it slowly the rest of the way to bottom. Because a lot of times the biggest jacks are going to be up off the bottom, and you want to try to hook that big jack. So when you're dropping that big bait down, drop it till you can't see it anymore, and then stop it with your thumb, and then slowly drop it the rest of the way. And you'll feel your bait start getting real excited, start wiggling around, start really fighting. That's when you know a big amberjack is looking at that bait and is swimming around it. That's when I stop it with my thumb. And when I'm fishing for jacks with a big bait and I'm using this method, I'm dropping slowly to bottom. My reel is in free spool and I'm just slowly letting pressure off with my thumb. When I feel the bait start going crazy, I stop it with my thumb and I hold the weight there steady. But I don't put it in gear. I leave it in free spool and just keep my thumb on it, because what I'm doing is when I feel that jack actually hit that bait, I let him eat it. Let him eat it, let him eat it, and he'll eventually start running, and he starts taking off with that bait. And I keep it in free spool. I let him eat it, let him eat it, let him eat it, and then when I'm confident that he got that 1, 2, or 3 pound huge bait into his mouth, into his throat, that's when I put the reel in gear and start cranking that circle hook into the corner of his mouth to reel that big fish up to the boat. Real good trick is feeding them that bait and letting them run. Because if you're using a big, huge bait, you can't just try to set the hook as soon as you feel the fish. You got to let them eat that bait. It's a big bait. Even if it's a big 100-pound jack, it's not going to swallow a 3-pound porgy in one bite. You got to let them eat. So real good method of just dropping that bait down slowly, and then when you feel them take it, let them eat and let them start running, and then you can put that reel in gear. Another question I saw was, do amberjack like live shrimp? No, I've never caught an amberjack on a live shrimp. I'm sure it's been done, and elephants do eat peanuts, but typically those amberjack like big baits. Big, huge pinfish, biggest pigfish you can find, big porgies, definitely really good baits for amberjack. Typically you don't catch amberjacks on dead bait. Typically you catch them on live bait or those jigs. But you do occasionally catch them on dead bait. You catch amberjack most often on either big wrecks or springs or really big structure, like big, huge ledges. But they do live on a variety of bottom types. Another question I saw was about flounder. Do you ever catch flounder on your trips? Occasionally we do catch flounder on our trips. Most of the time when we catch flounder, it's on those half-day fishing trips or our 10-hour day fishing trips. And we catch those flounder in the cooler months, especially in the early spring, first part of the year, when we're fishing around big areas of hard rock bottom with sandy patches adjacent to it. Those big flounder sit in the sand adjacent to those rock bottom areas that hold bait. And any bait that transverses off that rock into the sand, those big flounder hit it. So as we're drifting rock bottom areas on our 5-hour half day, a lot of times we'll drift over some sand. And when you're anchored up on a rock on a 10-hour and the boat swings from side to side, sometimes when we swing off that rock, we'll catch one of those big flounder. Typically we catch them on the small pinfish or a threadfin chunk or live shrimp. They typically don't bite the squid very much, but flounder are pretty common in those cooler months. But it's not something we target because we typically fish hard bottom. We're looking for rock bottom. Hard rock bottom is what we fish for those snapper and grouper and other species. And those flounder like nice soft sand bottoms. So the only time we catch them is when we're drifting through patchy areas of rock where there's some sand mixed in, or when you're fishing a small rock and you're swinging, and occasionally you'll swing off the side of the rock, and that's when we'll catch the flounder. But if you want to target flounder, definitely those cooler months. You can fish those nearshore artificial wrecks in 40, 50, 60, 80, 90 foot of water, and you want to drift by them and fish the sides of them, and you bring those little mud minnows out there. Those mud minnows work excellent. It is flounder crack. Use those little mud minnows on the sides of those artificial wrecks and that soft sand bottom. You're going to catch some monster doormat flounder for sure. Another question was about trolling lures. One of my favorite trolling lures are those Rapala X-Rap Magnum 30s and 40s. We have a ton of them in the shop. And a ton of the Rapala X-Rap Magnums work really well for trolling. It's one of our favorites. But what's new on the market and what I'm really, really liking the look and feel of, and I definitely want to get some here soon for myself. Let me look it up here. And hopefully I'm trying to bring them into, of course, Dogfish Tackle has them. Good old guys at Dogfish, they got everything. So I guess I can just get them from them. But here is what I'm talking about. These Nomad lures, they're like a Rapala X-Rap. Oops. It's not showing you guys the same thing that it's showing me. Let me see if I can't. Oh, okay, that's what I'm doing. Okay. Let me see if I can save this image. Sorry, guys. Apologize. Nomad lures. So essentially what it is, it's a lot like a Rapala X-Rap, except for the Rapala X-Rap is good at trolling speeds up to about maybe 7 to 9 knots. But when you start trolling real fast, those Rapala X-Raps aren't as good, and they only dive a certain depth. Whereas these Nomad lures apparently can dive to super deep depths, even at higher speeds. And I was talking to a guy today who said he purchased one, and they worked really, really well for him. And I just can't get that picture to come up, so I will try Google. But I was playing with them at Bass Pro Shops. They look really, really good in the box, and they have some really, really good quality tackle on them. So I'm excited to try them out. They definitely have a lot of options for those trolling lures. And let me see. No, I don't want to subscribe. There it is. It's the DTX Minnow. That's what it is. It's a floating trolling lure, but they have some really good high quality hooks to them. They have some really good high quality hardware, and they're apparently really, really good at deep diving. So I haven't tried them myself, but I've talked to some people that have used them with really, really good success. And I have seen some of the product reviews on them. They apparently dive super deep, and they are able to be trolled at really high speed. And when you hook a fish, they don't get real beat up, and you can continue to use them. So we're going to keep trying them out, and if they work as good as I think they're going to work, we're going to bring them into our shop, or if we can't get them, Dogfish Tackle down the road has them, Bass Pro Shops carries them. So they're definitely pretty cool, and they're readily available. So good options there. So I think I covered all the questions I saw earlier. Remember, guys, if I missed your question, I always try to go back through after the show is over and answer your questions that I missed. I can only get to a certain amount of questions, and I typically look at those questions earlier in the video when we're watching the videos. When you guys are watching the videos, it gives me time to go back through your comments and pick out some questions to answer later in the video. But if I missed them, or if you asked a question towards the end of the show and I didn't see it yet, I'll try to go back through and answer those questions for you. Don't forget, we still got to give away a half-price 39-hour trip. We already gave away 4 free trips earlier in the show, so I appreciate everybody tuning in, starting at 8:30 with us. Next week, we're going to have another live show, so make sure you tune in next week. Don't forget about our Friday morning, 8:15 a.m. Fox shows. My dog just ran in, hit me in the leg, it freaked me out. But don't forget about our Friday morning Fox 13 shows. Every Friday morning you can tune into Fox 13 for the Good Catch segment. And maybe you guys can help me out here, because I'm trying to get Fox 13 News to post our segments online. So hopefully you guys can help me out with that. If you go onto Google, and just go to google.com, and when you're on Google, you can type in Fox 13 News. So even if you're not local to Tampa Bay, even if you live in another state, you can do this. When you type in Fox 13 News, you can come up to that Fox 13 News thing, and right here, live, you just click that live button, and that brings you to their live news feed. So you can watch the Good Catch segment I do every Friday morning at 8:15 a.m. right here on their website. And when you're on their website, if you scroll down to the bottom, there is hopefully a contact us button. I don't see it. Oh, there's a follow us, so you can sign up. But you can also just call their news desks or reach out to them via their Facebook pages. But I need you guys to help me reach out to Fox 13 and ask them to post the Good Catch segment, because I'm hoping that they post it online, so that way we can show that video on our Facebook and YouTube and post it. So if you don't get to watch it live, if you didn't happen to catch the news live, we can post it so people can watch it later. So need your guys' help with that. Hopefully you enjoyed the show tonight. I know I enjoyed the show as always. Next week I'm going to work on trying to get one of our captains and crew to join me in the studio with these red snapper season in full swing and all these busy trips going on. Our schedules are all very tough, and it's very difficult to convince one of those captain and crew members to come in and join me. But leave in the comments, tell me in the comments who you want to see join me on the show, and hopefully I'll try to get them to join us next week. Remember, tune in 8:30 p.m. We hope to see you next week. Don't forget 8:15 every Friday morning for the Fox 13 segment. We do those morning daily videos on Facebook and YouTube, and also on our Instagram stories. So hopefully you can join us for those. And let's see who... Oh, Christopher Knapp. Thanks, buddy. It's Fox 13 Tampa News at Fox TV. There's the email address. I'll pop it into the chats there, so you guys can shoot them an email and ask them to start posting the Good Catch segment. We want to see the Good Catch segment posted online. That is the thing I need you to ask for me, and hopefully between everybody reaching out, we'll start getting those things posted up. But we will see you next week for another live show. Before we go, we got to see who won a half-price 39-hour trip. We got up to about 260 or 270 live viewers, so we were not quite high enough to give away a free 39-hour trip, but we were very close. Maybe next week we'll do a little better, so make sure you tune back in. One thing I do want to address here real quickly is some of these rumors flying around about the bacteria. There is no flesh-eating bacteria or crazy bacteria in our area. That is happening south of Tampa Bay, from Anna Maria Island, south Sarasota area, down south of us. It's not in our general local area, and it's not affecting our offshore fish, and it has no effect on fisheries at all. Some people are saying that fisheries are closed, you can't keep fish. That's not true at all. It's not true inshore, it's not true nearshore, it's not true offshore. There is a mandatory catch and release of snook, redfish, and trout inshore, but that is all due to the red tide kills that happened last year. We don't have red tide, we don't have blue-green algae, we don't have flesh-eating bacteria. Our waters are clear, our waters are safe, and we're fishing, swimming, snorkeling, and catching and eating fish every day. So don't worry about it. It's a great time to get out there on the water. Remember, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too darn busy. So let's see who won a half-price 39-hour trip. So that is a 39-hour fishing trip for $180 instead of $369. So let's see who won. Remember, you got to message our page or shoot me an email very quickly. And that is Andy Wilson. Andy Wilson is the lucky winner of that 39-hour fishing trip at half price. Congratulations, Andy. Thank you for watching. To the rest of you guys, make sure you tune in again next week. You can win another chance at some free fishing trips. Don't forget, at our Bass Pro Shops events, we always give away free fishing trips there as well. August 17th is our unconfirmed next Bass Pro Shops seminar. When we confirm that date with the Bass Pro Shops, we'll definitely be making events on Facebook and talking about it in next week's live show. So make sure you tune in. Don't forget about our Friday morning Fox 13 thing, 8:15. Tune in to our morning videos every day. And make sure you like our page, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and remember, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too darn busy. Thanks for tuning in tonight, guys. Have a great Sunday night.